I have missed you so much. I thought I was dying. Sophia, now that you're back, we absolutely have to celebrate in style. Inside the taxi, Ellie, her best friend who had just returned from overseas, enthusiastically grabbed Sophia's hand. Of course. Did you think I was going to run off somewhere? Sophia replied with a smile that lit up her entire face. I've booked a suite at the St. Regis, the best place in Manhattan. We are not sleeping tonight, Ellie declared with a grand flourish. Sophia felt a slight discomfort. You haven't changed. Do we really need to go somewhere so expensive? We could just go to any bar and catch up. No way. For you, for me, and for our long friendship, it has to be the best of the best, Ellie insisted, inflexible. Hey, why didn't James come to pick me up? Sophia asked casually, brushing a strand of hair aside. He left this morning. A work trip came up. Suddenly he says he won't be back for 3 days. What a coincidence. Yes. He left in such a hurry. He even took the comfortable car, the SUV. He just asked me to take good care of the kids, Ellie said, pouting. You know how men are. Work comes first. Anyway, enough about him. Tell me about my godchildren. Did anything fun happen? At the mention of her children, Sophia's face brightened. You wouldn't believe how clever Matthew is. The day before yesterday, his father hid some candy, and he climbed onto a chair to find it. Then he went and gave half to his sister. I caught them both with chocolate smeared all over their mouths, and he looked up at me, totally serious, imitating his father. Mom, we're sharing the happiness. Ha, so young and already knows how to make excuses. Who does he get that from? Who do you think? Sophia's eyes curved like 2 crescent moons. Amidst laughter and chatter, they quickly arrived at the St. Regis. While Ellie checked in at the reception desk, Sophia, standing beside her, continued enthusiastically with stories about her daughter. Our Lucy is obsessed with painting right now. All the walls in the house look like her personal canvas. She was about to recount how her daughter had drawn her father as a giant pumpkin when Ellie's voice suddenly cut off. Someone had grabbed her arm tightly. Sophia. Ellie's voice was tense. Look over there. Sophia turned her head in the direction her friend was pointing. A glass panoramic elevator was slowly descending from the upper floors. Inside were 2 people, a man and a woman. The man wore the gray shirt she had personally chosen for him. The profile of his face was so familiar, it was etched into her memory. It was James. His arm was wrapped tenderly around the waist of a young woman. He leaned in to whisper something in her ear, with a sweet smile that Sophia hadn't seen in a long time. The woman threw her head back, laughing loudly, and snuggled into his embrace. Sophia's head began to pound. Just this morning, before leaving home, James had hugged her and told her he would miss them during his urgent business trip, that he had to go personally, that he would be back in 3 days at the most, that he was taking the family car, and that she should take a taxi if she went out, for safety. All those loving words turned into sharp thorns pressing against her chest. The noise around her seemed to fade. The chatter with her friend, the children's mischief, the joy of reunion, everything lost its luster in an instant. Only that horrific scene remained before her eyes. Ding! The elevator reached the ground floor, and the doors opened slowly. James stepped out, holding the woman close and laughing. When he looked up and saw Sophia, their eyes met. The air froze. The smile on James's face shattered like ice. His hand, which was wrapped around the woman's waist, hung suspended in the air. He was paralyzed as if struck by lightning. The woman beside him, Vanessa, was also startled upon seeing Sophia and Ellie, but her confusion lasted barely a second. She quickly regained her composure. Far from pulling away from James, she pressed even closer to him, gripping his arm with determination. Vanessa lifted her chin and looked at Sophia. It was the brazen look of a victor examining her rival. That bastard James! Ellie, trembling with rage, pulled away from Sophia, ready to lunge at them. Ellie, stop! Sophia held her back. Her voice was soft, but held unwavering firmness. When Ellie turned, she saw her friend's face terrifyingly calm. No tears, no reproach, not the slightest hint of emotion. Sophia stared at the couple as if they were 2 complete strangers. That extreme calm was more unsettling than any hysterical outburst. James's lips trembled several times. He seemed to want to say something, offer an excuse, but the words wouldn't come out. He wanted to approach them, but Vanessa clung to him with all her might. Sophia looked away, turned slowly, and gave a distinguished smile to the reception clerk, who didn't know where to look. "Excuse me, I would like to cancel the reservation." The receptionist stared at her, astonished. Sophia paused, and added in a clear voice, "I think we'll go somewhere else. This place feels a little tacky." Having said this, without looking back at anyone, she took Ellie's still furious arm, and walked firmly toward the exit. From behind, James, who had finally managed to break free from Vanessa, ran after them. "Sophia! Sophia! Wait! Listen to me! I can explain! It's not what you think!" Sophia paid him no mind. She didn't slow her pace. The cell phone in her pocket began to vibrate furiously. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Stepping out through the revolving door, the sunlight dazzled her. Naturally, she pulled out her phone. The name James flashed incessantly on the screen. She looked at it for a moment and slid her finger across the screen to silence it. The whole world seemed to go mute. A clear and precise plan began to form in her mind. Step 1. Gather evidence. In front of the street Regis, Ellie flagged down a taxi. "Sophia, let's go to my place. Don't go home. How can you face that scoundrel?" Ellie said worriedly, gripping her shoulders. Sophia shook her head. Her expression was incredibly serene. "I'm not going home." "Where are you going? To fight him? I can't leave you alone in your state." "I'm not going to fight." Sophia opened the taxi door and got in. Then she turned to Ellie. "Ellie, you go ahead and check in and get the room. Rest a bit. I'll call you later." Her tone admitted no argument. Ellie wanted to say more, but seeing her friend's clear, firm gaze, she swallowed her words. "All right, be careful, and call me if anything happens. I'll come running." The taxi pulled away, leaving the luxurious hotel behind. Sophia leaned back in the seat and closed her eyes. The phone's vibration had ceased, but messages started arriving, one after another, all from James. "Sophia, where are you? Please listen to me. It's a misunderstanding. Don't be angry. Let's talk at home, please. Let's talk face to face. I don't have anything going on with that woman. It was just a necessary business commitment with a client. Truly." Sophia read the messages expressionlessly, as if watching a clumsy actor's monologue. She did not reply. Instead, she looked up the Street Regis's number and called. They answered instantly. "The Street Regis Hotel? How may I assist you?" said a kind female voice. Sophia's voice became sweet and affectionate. "Hello, I'm the wife of James Thorne. I wanted to make sure my husband's room is ready. He just got back from a trip, and I want him to be comfortable." The receptionist, surprised by the call, hesitated for a moment. One moment please. I'll check." A little later the voice returned. "You are Mr. Thorne's wife, correct?" "Yes, confirmed. Mr. Thorne has already checked in." "What a relief," Sophia continued in a worried tone. "He told me he was bringing a very important guest this time. I think her name is Vanessa. Is that right?" "Yes, that is correct. Mr. Thorne and Miss Vanessa checked in together." Sophia's nails gently dug into her palm, but her voice remained cheerful. "Ah, perfect. That's good. You have to treat clients well. Just out of curiosity, what kind of room is it? If it's a standard one, I'd like to pay extra to upgrade it. I don't want us to be stingy with a guest." The receptionist, touched by her perfect wife demeanor, responded without suspicion. "Ma'am, you are very thoughtful, Mr. Thorne has reserved one of our best couples suites with panoramic views, so don't worry, it's the best we have." Couples suite with panoramic views. What beautiful words. Understood. Thank you very much. Sophia hung up and pressed the red recording button on her phone. A crisp audio file was silently saved to her list. Only then did she look out the window. It was already getting dark. City lights streamed across the glass. This city, where she had lived for 10 years, seemed strangely alien tonight. The taxi stopped in front of their home, a house in Greenwich CT. Sophia paid, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. As soon as she approached the front door, it swung open from within. James was standing there, his face etched with anguish. A button on his shirt was wrongly fastened, and his hair was disheveled. Seeing Sophia, he rushed towards her as if she were his savior. "Sophia, you're finally here. I thought I was going to die." He tried to grab her, but Sophia took a step back, dodging his touch. It was a subtle movement, but the distance it created was unmistakable. James's hand hung in the air. He immediately changed his expression to one bordering on tears and said, voice choked, "Sophia, believe me, what you saw at the hotel is not what it looks like. That girl, Vanessa, is the daughter of a major client for my company. The project is so crucial that I had no other choice. She kept insisting she wanted to try the best suite. I was only playing along for business. I swear nothing happened between us. I am innocent," he pleaded with total sincerity, his eyes reddened. At another time, Sophia probably would have believed him, but now she found him merely noisy. "Are you finished?" she asked coldly. James froze. "If you are finished, sit down." Sophia walked directly to the living room sofa and sat down as if she were in her own office. James, overwhelmed by her authority, sat submissively on the opposite sofa, like a defendant awaiting sentencing. The house was silent. The children must have been asleep. Sophia, without looking at him, pulled out her phone. James watched her nervously. He couldn't understand how his wife, always as docile as water, had suddenly become so strange while he desperately searched for a new excuse. A clear female voice sounded from the phone. "The Street Regis Hotel. How may I assist you?" James's pupils contracted. He heard the recording of Sophia, using that affectionate voice he knew so well, pretending to be his wife and inquiring about his room. When the receptionist said, "Mr. Thorne and Miss Vanessa checked in together," James's face began to turn pale. He wanted to lunge and snatch the phone, but his legs felt like lead. The recording continued. "What kind of room is it? If it's a standard one, I'd like to pay extra." "Ma'am, you are very thoughtful. Mr. Thorne has reserved one of our best couples suites with panoramic views." When the final word sounded clearly, the last trace of color drained from James's face. He collapsed onto the sofa as if all his strength had been sucked out. All his lies and excuses had become a ridiculous joke in the face of that recording. Cold sweat beaded his forehead. Sophia stopped the recording, lifted her head, and looked at him in silence. There was no anger or sadness in her eyes, only a deadly calm. "I will give you two options," she said. Her voice was clear and cold, devoid of emotion. "First, tomorrow at 9 a.m., we meet at the courthouse downtown. Mutual divorce. We split the marital assets 50/50. Custody of the children will be mine. You will have a flexible visitation schedule." James shot up his head in disbelief. "Divorce?" She was asking for a divorce. "No, Sophia, not divorce. I've been an idiot, truly. Please give me a chance." He tried to stand up, but Sophia's voice stopped him. "Sit down." It wasn't a shout, but it held an inescapable authority. James's body went rigid. Sophia, looking directly at him, presented the second option. "Second, I send this recording and the photos I took in the lobby to your parents, to all your company's board members, and to all our relatives." She paused. Each word was like an ice pick. "I will make sure everyone sees what kind of man you are, and your clients will see very clearly how you attend to your clientele." James's body began to tremble uncontrollably. Looking at his wife, so cold and unfamiliar, he felt a fear that chilled him to the bone for the first time. This woman, whom he thought he had under control, hid a side he knew nothing about. With trembling lips, he barely managed to articulate, "Since when did you become so terrifying?" A mocking, almost imperceptible smile played on Sophia's lips. "Since the precise moment you trampled on my trust." At 1 a.m., the doorbell of the Greenwich house rang insistently. James, clinging to a last lifeline, rushed to open the door. His parents, in pajamas, were waiting with worried faces. "James, what's going on? Why did you make us come here at this hour?" his mother asked immediately upon entering. "Mom, Dad, please, help me." James fell to his knees with a thud. His performance was Oscar-worthy. I don't know what's wrong with Sophia. Just because I spoke to a client for work, she comes home and demands a divorce. Dad, Mom, how many years have we been together? We have 2 children. How can she want to end everything overnight? What will become of this family? He painted himself as a man, sacrificing for his family, enduring work humiliations, and now being misunderstood by his wife. His father frowned, while his mother looked with pity at Sophia, who was descending the stairs. Sophia, honey, what happened? Anything can be fixed by talking. How did you get to talking about divorce? Before Sophia could open her mouth, James discreetly winked at a small figure rubbing his eyes in a corner. Matthew, their 2-year-old son, approached. Mom, please forgive Dad, he said, tugging on Sophia's clothes. Grandma says all men make mistakes, and if Dad knows he was wrong, he's still a good father. We can't not have Dad at home. These were ideas James had undoubtedly instilled in him gradually. Sophia's heart broke, seeing her son so manipulated. Before she could respond, another door opened. Lucy, 10, rushed out in her bare pajamas, indignant. Matthew, what are you saying? Dad is the one who messed up. He betrayed Mom. She ran to Sophia and hugged her leg, looking at her brother. If you do something wrong, you have to face the consequences. Why does Mom have to put up with it and forgive? My teacher says when you make a mistake, you have to admit it and accept the punishment. What would you know? Matthew retorted, red with anger. The money for this house is earned by Dad. Without him, where would we live? What would we eat? Do you think you could still go to your expensive painting lessons? Dad earns the money, but Mom has given everything for this home. Without her, do you think you'd have good food and clean clothes every day? Dad only gave money, but Mom gave us love. The 2 children began arguing heatedly in front of the entire family. James's father's face hardened. That's enough, both of you, he shouted. Honey, please, they're just children. Don't scare them, his mother intervened, trying to mediate. Sophia, you tell us, dear, what exactly happened? Sophia calmed her daughter, stroking her back, and then looked serenely at her in-laws. She hadn't joined the argument or cried. She simply pulled out her phone, and in front of everyone, she played the recording again. Mr. Thorne has reserved one of our best couple suites with panoramic views. The clear female voice echoed in the silent living room. Every word was like a slap in the face to James, who turned ashen. He never imagined Sophia would be so ruthless. When the recording ended, Sophia turned off the phone and, as if presenting a report, recounted point by point James's lie about the business trip, the embrace in the hotel lobby, and his subsequent excuses. She did so without emotion or reproach, with impeccable logic. A deathly silence fell over the living room. Her father-in-law's chest rose and fell with agitation. He looked at his son kneeling, and his lips trembled. His mother-in-law's face also reflected emotion and disappointment. You're worse than an animal, her father-in-law finally exploded. He grabbed a teacup, intending to throw it at his head. Robert, please. His wife restrained his arm. Don't get yourself worked up over this wretch. You'll have a heart attack. I'll kill him today. I swear I'll kill him. He has dragged the Thorne family honor through the mud. Our reputation, he shouted, pointing at James. And you have the nerve to beg Sophia for forgiveness after the filth you've done? What are your children going to learn from you? How could I have a son like you? James remained slumped on the floor, unable to utter a word. All his plans had vanished before the irrefutable evidence and his father's fury. His mother-in-law helped her husband sit on the sofa and approached Sophia. She took her cold hands, her eyes red. Sophia, honey, we are so sorry. We raised this wretch poorly, she said guiltily. This is entirely his fault. We are on your side. Do what you have to do. This family will support you. Her words were the final verdict of that family trial. James was utterly defeated. The saviors he had called had become the mountain crushing him. His father, still breathless, pointed at James. From now until the divorce is finalized, you are confined to this house. Don't even think about leaving. Then he told his wife, take his phone and his laptop, cut off all outside communication. I want to see with my own eyes if he tries any other stupid things. The in-laws decided to stay that night at the house to personally supervise James, who was completely isolated. Like a beaten dog, he was sent to the guest room under his father's shouting. When the living room finally calmed down, the mother-in-law sadly embraced her granddaughter and sat Sophia down next to her. She leaned close and whispered so only they could hear, "Sophia, don't worry, I have all the financial records for this house in my head. I know every dollar he has earned and spent over the past few years. Tomorrow, we review everything together. Not a cent for that scoundrel and his mistress." The next morning, the sunlight flooded the living room. The atmosphere at the breakfast table was tense. James, with dark circles reaching his cheeks, hadn't slept a wink. His parents, sitting at the head of the table, wore grim expressions. Sophia emerged from her room with a thick folder. She placed it on the table with a firm thud. "This is the list of all the marital assets since we got married." She pulled out a stack of papers and slid it toward the center of the table. James took the list, and at the first glance, he felt dizzy. It was detailed, terrifyingly detailed. It included their 3 apartments, both cars, the bank names and account numbers of all important deposits, the name and amount of every financial product, and even the purchase date, code, and acquisition price of every stock and mutual fund. The figures were accurate to the second decimal. It wasn't a list, it was a net. James's hands began to sweat. Some funds he had diverted and believed perfectly hidden appeared here with total transparency. His father took the list, skimmed it, and gave a cold laugh. "Look at this. Look at how Sophia has managed this house." "And you? What have you been doing?" His mother, seeing the list, felt even more pity for her daughter-in-law. "Sophia, how much work did you put into this?" "It was my duty, Mom," Sophia replied calmly. She looked at James. "Review it. If there are no issues, we will base the division on the total of this list. If you agree, we'll save a lot of trouble." James's mind worked furiously. He turned the pages, his back soaked in cold sweat. Most of the assets were irrefutable. There was clear evidence, but then he remembered something. A small spark of hope ignited. One asset was missing from the list. A small city condo he had secretly bought with a project bonus 2 years ago. No one knew about it. Its value had risen considerably. If Sophia didn't know, he could keep that last cushion. Holding back his frantic heartbeat, he pretended to review the list meticulously, and finally nodded. "Yes, I've seen it." No problem," he said, his mouth dry. Sophia watched him in silence until he finished. Then she gently drummed her fingers on the table, and the city condo on Park Avenue, Unit 702 inches Midtown East, 750 square feet. Each word Sophia spoke was a layer of pallor added to James's face. When she finished reciting the exact address, James felt his bones melt, and he nearly slid off the chair. He looked at Sophia, terrified, his lips trembling, unable to make a sound. How does she know? How is this possible? Sophia, oblivious to his shock, continued in a monotone voice. "The copy of the purchase contract and the deed are in your office, in the 3rd drawer, hidden in the false bottom. Inside the personalized folder I gave you for your birthday, you said you loved it and would keep your most important documents there." James's mind went blank. That drawer, that false bottom, his most secret hiding place, all his secrets had been exposed to this woman for a long time. It wasn't that she didn't know, it was that she had allowed him to hide it. A dread he had never felt before coursed through his body. It was then he understood that all his past cunning was merely child's play in Sophia's eyes. James's back was completely drenched. He looked at Sophia as if seeing her for the first time. "If you have any objection to this list," Sophia's tone remained impassive, "I have no problem discussing it in court." She paused and delivered the final blow. "I remember every income we've had during our marriage, including, of course, the undocumented funds that were difficult to register in the books." The words "undocumented funds" exploded in James's ears like thunder. He raised his head abruptly with an expression of absolute panic. The bribes for projects, the commissions, and the shady deals he had pocketed. If all that came out in a trial and triggered an IRS audit, the consequences were unimaginable. This was no longer just about divorce and asset division. It would be his social ruin and could even land him in prison. James understood everything. The mutual agreement divorce, the peaceful division, was the greatest show of generosity Sophia had granted him. He had no room left to negotiate. "I agree," he managed to grit out. He felt all his strength drain away. "I agree to all your conditions." Sophia collected the papers from the table and put them back in the folder. "Good," she said, standing up. "I give you 3 days. Settle your relationship with Miss Vanessa, and both of you disappear from my sight forever." Having said this, she prepared to leave the room. James remained slumped in the chair, staring blankly, like a soulless doll. He had lost. An absolute defeat. As Sophia was leaving the room, her mobile briefly vibrated. It wasn't a call, it was a text message from an unknown number. The content was very short. "If you encounter difficulties with banking procedures, do not hesitate to contact me." Sophia paused for a moment. Who was it? Who was observing everything from the shadows, anticipating even her next obstacles? She looked at the agreement signed by James and put it away again. She felt no joy in the victory. Everything was just beginning. Although the divorce agreement was signed, the asset division was the true battleground. She knew he wouldn't easily relinquish what he considered his. For now, she couldn't focus on the message's origin. The most urgent task was to secure what belonged to her and her children. The next day, Sophia went to the bank alone. She had to request the preventive freeze of the marital assets. It was a measure to prevent James from diverting or squandering the joint estate during the divorce waiting period. She took a number and sat down. "Client A37, window 3, please." Sophia stood up and walked to the preferred service window. Inside, a man in his 30s with gold-rimmed glasses and perfectly combed hair awaited her. His name tag read David Miller, client manager. "Hello, good morning. I'm here to handle some business." Sophia handed him her ID and a copy of her marriage certificate. Mr. Miller adjusted his glasses and took the documents with indifference. "What service do you require?" His tone carried a slight air of arrogance. "I would like to request a freeze on some of the joint accounts under my name and my husband's, James Thorne." The manager's eyebrows arched. He looked at her closely for the first time. "A freeze on an account?" He chuckled slightly. "Mrs. Thorne, that is not a simple procedure. It requires very complete documentation." "I have brought it." Sophia handed him another folder containing a legal report from her lawyer and documents proving the divorce process was underway. Mr. Miller reviewed the papers very slowly, frowning and shaking his head as if looking for an excuse. After about 10 minutes, he handed the folder back. "I'm sorry, ma'am, this cannot be processed. It is missing the certificate of family mediation issued by the court," he said, pointing to a corner of a paper with total certainty. Sophia frowned. "Mr. Miller, according to bank regulations, the key documents for this process are the lawyer's report and proof of the divorce process. The documents I have submitted meet all requirements. The certificate you mention is not mandatory." Before coming, she had consulted with an expert lawyer and knew the procedure perfectly. The manager's face showed clear annoyance. He hadn't expected an apparently docile housewife to know so much. "Regulation is one thing, and people are another," he said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. "In this bank, we have our own internal risk management guidelines. And if I say it is necessary, it is necessary. Without that certificate, nothing can be done today." His attitude was inflexible. Sophia instantly understood that this wasn't a procedural problem. Someone was deliberately obstructing the process. James had acted fast. Knowing what she would do, he had pulled strings to buy time. Understood. Sophia did not argue further. She collected her documents and stood up. It wasn't worth wasting time with someone like this. Just as she was turning away, a calm male voice sounded beside her. "Mr. Miller, you seem very busy." Sophia turned. A man had stopped next to her. He was dressed informally but elegantly, without a tie, but his air of confidence was imposing. He wasn't addressing her, but the manager. Seeing him, the arrogance vanished from Miller's face. He jumped up with a flattering smile. "Mr. Vance, what brings you here? If you had called ahead, I would have come out to greet you personally." He bowed almost 90 degrees. The man, whom he called Mr. Vance, ignored his servility and glanced at the papers Sophia was holding. Then he leaned toward the window and, in a low voice that only the two of them could hear, said a single word. Sophia didn't quite catch it, but she thought she heard, Atlas. That single word was enough to make Miller's face turn paper white. Drops of sweat appeared on his forehead, and he began to tremble. Mr. Vance, I stammered, unable to articulate a complete sentence. The man had already straightened up, and didn't look at him again, as if he had only passed by accidentally. Miller remained paralyzed for a few seconds, and suddenly turned to Sophia with a smile more forced than a cry. Ma'am, one moment." He rushed out of the window and intercepted her path. "I am so terribly sorry. Please forgive me. I don't know the protocol well. I confused the procedures." He kept bowing. "The procedure you wish to perform absolutely does not require that certificate. I don't know what I was thinking. Please come back. I'll process it for you right away, immediately." His change in attitude was so drastic that he seemed like another person. Sophia looked at him calmly, saying nothing. She glanced at the back of the man heading toward the exit and returned to sit at the window. "In that case, I appreciate it." No, the pleasure is mine." The rest of the process was incredibly fast. The papers that had previously been a problem were now processed without the slightest obstacle. In less than 5 minutes, everything was ready. "Ma'am, everything is handled. Your requests have been applied." He handed her the receipt with respect. Sophia checked it, confirmed everything was in order, thanked him, and left. As she exited the bank, she saw the man again on the steps of the entrance. He was looking at his phone as if waiting for someone. She took a deep breath and approached him. "Sir, thank you for what happened today." She said it from the heart. The man looked up. Recognizing her, he smiled slightly. "It was nothing. I overheard it by chance." He paused and added, "That James Thorne doesn't have a very good reputation in our sector." Sophia felt a pang. So he did know James. "In any case, I truly appreciate your help." The man smiled and pulled a business card from his pocket. It was a simple design, a name, and a phone number on a white background. Alexander Vance. "If you run into any similar problems again, call me." Sophia took the card. Who was this man? He seemed to know a lot about James. And that word, Atlas, what did it mean? "Thank you." She tucked the card away. Alexander nodded and headed towards a black sedan waiting at the curb. He got into the car, and it disappeared into the traffic. Sophia stood there thoughtfully, looking at the card. Just then, her phone vibrated. It was a text message from Ellie. "Breaking news. I just heard from a contact that the main competitor of James's company, the one stealing all their projects, is the Atlas Group, and they say the CEO's last name is Vance." Sophia's pupils contracted. She looked down at the name on the card again. Alexander Vance. He was the CEO of the Atlas Group. And if so, why was he helping her? The 70th birthday party for James's father, Mr. Thorne Sr., Robert, was a grand affair for the family. As a family of some renown in the city, the banquet was held in the ballroom of a 5-star hotel. The venue was packed, and the atmosphere was lively. Before the party began, in a private room, James was pleading with Sophia, nearly on his knees. "Sophia, please, I beg you. Today is my father's birthday. Everyone here is family and business associates." He grabbed her arm with a pitiful voice. "Let's not argue today, okay? Just for one day. Save my father's reputation. Save our family's reputation. We can pretend to be a happy couple like before. When the party is over, I'll do whatever you say. Anything." Sophia looked at him coldly. "Pretend?" "Yes, pretend. For my father's sake, do it for him." "Fine," Sophia accepted, to James's surprise and delight, but she pulled away from his grip, her voice devoid of warmth. "This is the last time, and don't touch me." James's smile froze for a moment, but he nodded quickly. Okay, I won't touch you." As long as she cooperated, everything would be fine. The banquet began. Sophia, in an elegant gown and an impeccable smile, appeared on James's arm. He walked with his back straight as if nothing had happened. Together they toasted their in-laws and received congratulations from relatives. James and Sophia look so good together, still as in love as ever. Sophia is certainly an excellent daughter-in-law. She takes care of the house, and she's gorgeous. Hearing these compliments inflated James's ego to the point that he began fantasizing that everything could go back to the way it was. Perhaps, if Sophia wanted to, they could still save their marriage. When the party was at its peak, the ballroom door suddenly opened. A woman in a white dress appeared in the doorway. It was Vanessa. She wore heavy makeup, but had a pitiful demeanor, and she held a carefully wrapped gift. The murmuring in the room instantly ceased. All eyes were fixed on the unexpected guest. James's smile completely vanished. He never imagined Vanessa would dare to show up here. Vanessa ignored all the stares. She only had eyes for James, who was sitting at the main table. She walked directly toward him. Her goal was clear: to announce their relationship in the most important venue and leave James no escape. "James, darling," she approached him. Her voice was low but filled with coquettish reproach. "I heard it was your father's birthday, and I came to wish him well. Why didn't you tell me? Were you afraid I'd bother you?" As she spoke, she tried to take his other arm, as if that were her rightful place. A public drama was about to erupt before everyone. The relatives' glances became loaded with meaning. Whispers began. James's father's face was already dark with fury. His mother-in-law, nervous and embarrassed, didn't know what to do. James panicked, pale as a ghost. He wanted to push Vanessa away, but he couldn't cause a scene. He looked at Sophia with pleading eyes, hoping that, as always, she would save the situation for the sake of the family. Everyone expected Sophia to explode, to overturn the table, to rip the mistress's hair out. But the smile on Sophia's face didn't change at all. She even detached herself from James's arm and stood up. She approached Vanessa with elegance and dignity. To everyone's astonishment, she gently took Vanessa's hand. "Miss Vanessa, is that right? I am so glad you came." Vanessa froze. This reaction was not in her script. "Come, don't just stand there. Sit down." Sophia enthusiastically led her to the center of the main table, between her father-in-law and James. Then she approached the master of ceremonies and naturally took the microphone. Her clear voice resonated throughout the ballroom. "Dear guests, family, and friends, a moment of your attention, please." The room fell silent. Sophia smiled, surveyed the room and finally fixed her gaze on the still confused Vanessa. "Taking advantage of this special day, my father-in-law's 70th birthday, I would like to share some very happy news with all of you." She paused and placed a hand on Vanessa's shoulder. "I want to formally introduce this lovely lady, Miss Vanessa. She is the true love my husband, James, has found outside our home. His soulmate." A murmur ran through the room. Vanessa's face turned livid. She tried to pull away, but Sophia held her firmly. James was not just pale, he was trembling from head to toe, on the verge of fainting. Sophia ignored the reactions. She turned to look directly at her husband, whose face was ashen. Her voice was not loud, but it had a piercing coldness. "Since you have found true love, you shouldn't keep wasting your time with me, should you?" Her smile became even more radiant. "Why don't we settle everything today? Right here, in front of all our family and friends, let's sign our divorce agreement. Let me, Sophia, give you my blessing." As she finished speaking, she didn't take out lipstick or powder compact from her purse. She pulled out 2 impeccably printed copies of the divorce agreement and a black pen. She cleanly placed the agreement and the pen on the Lazy Susan at the center of the main table. The sound resonated louder than any slap. The ballroom was plunged into stunned silence. Everyone was open-mouthed at the shocking scene. James, seeing the agreement, felt his legs give out, as if he had just received a death sentence. Vanessa was also in shock. She never imagined her plan to displace the wife would turn into her own public execution. "Wretch!" His father-in-law leaped up, trembling with anger. He pointed his finger at James, his eyes bloodshot. "If you don't sign that paper right now, forget I'm your father. The Thorne family doesn't need a scoundrel like you." Vanessa's face was ghostly white. She finally understood that she wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. She was merely the knife Sophia had used to stab James at his most vulnerable point. Sitting at the children's table, Matthew watched his mother on the stage, brilliant and powerful, with a very complex look. The commotion at the birthday party ended with James, under the furious gaze of his father and everyone present, signing the document with a trembling hand. Sophia collected her copy of the agreement and left that sickening place without looking back. But things didn't end there. A few days later, Sophia received a call from Matthew's homeroom teacher. The teacher's voice was stern. "Are you Matthew Thorne's mother? I'd like to speak with you about his behavior in school." "Yes, I am." "Tell me, Professor. Lately, rumors have been circulating at school about your family. I don't know if you're aware, but Matthew has been bragging to his classmates that his father is going to replace you with a new mother, younger and prettier, and he says his mother is a useless cast-off." Sophia gripped the phone tightly. These words are having a very negative influence on the other students. There have already been some confrontations, and other children have started excluding him. "I would ask you to come to school. We need to address this matter seriously." "Understood, Professor. I'm on my way." Hanging up, Sophia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. James's brainwashing of their son was far more serious than she had imagined. At the school, Sophia found her son in the teacher's lounge. Matthew stood stiff-necked, looking angry. Seeing her, he glanced at her sideways. Sophia didn't reprimand him in front of the teacher. She merely said calmly, "Thank you, Professor. Could you leave us alone with him for a moment?" "Of course." Sophia took Matthew to a quiet corner of the playground. The afternoon sun was warm, and no one was around. Matthew put his hands in his pockets with a defiant attitude. Sophia didn't mention what had happened at school. She simply asked him a question. "Matthew, what do you think is the most important thing that holds a family together?" Matthew was perplexed. He didn't expect that question. He answered almost by instinct. "Money. Without money, would we live in this big house? Would I go to this school? Could Lucy go to her painting classes? Grandma says Dad is the pillar of the house because he earns a lot of money." These were the ideas James and his mother had drilled into his head. Sophia shook her head. "Let me tell you a story." Instead of arguing, she began to speak in a soft voice. "There were two squirrels who built a nice house together in a tree. One of them went out every day to find the strongest branches and the prettiest leaves to build and decorate the house. The other went out to find the tastiest acorns to store for the winter. They shared the tasks and trusted each other. Their home was the warmest in the forest. But one day, the squirrel who sought acorns met another, prettier squirrel. He began secretly giving her some of the acorns he collected, and he lied to his partner, telling her that the harvest that year was poor. Finally, one day, the squirrel who built the house discovered everything. She realized that the foundations of her home, a home full of trust and warmth, were gnawed and hollow inside. When the story ended, Matthew was silent. He had understood. Sophia knelt down to his level. She looked him in the eyes and, with total seriousness, asked him the first question. "Matthew, when you grow up and get married, if one day your wife, with the excuse that it was just a mistake, takes the money you saved together and gives it to another man, would you be okay with that?" Matthew's pupils contracted. He opened his mouth but said nothing. Sophia continued, staring at him. "And when you are suffering from the betrayal, if your own son stands next to the person who betrayed you to applaud her and points at you saying, 'You're a useless failure. You deserve to be abandoned,' how would you feel?" The two questions fell like heavy hammers on Matthew's conscience. He had never thought about the problem from that perspective. He had always believed that his father having a younger woman was a symbol of his power, and that his mother leaving was a sign of her inability to keep a man. But now, putting himself in the place of the betrayed, a shame and humiliation he had never felt before flooded him. He wanted to object, but the words wouldn't come out. Sophia watched him in silence. She knew her words had taken effect. She stroked his hair tenderly, and her voice softened again. "Matthew, remember, Mom was not abandoned. Mom chose a life with more dignity, and your father is the one who broke the rules and now has to face the consequences of his actions. You can choose whose side you are on. I won't force you. But before you choose, Think carefully about what kind of person, with what kind of values, you admire and respect." With that, she stood up, adding not another word. That night, when Matthew returned home, he was different. When James tried to win him over with a new toy, as always, Matthew ignored him for the first time, went to his room, and closed the door. Late that night, Sophia's phone rang. It was a message from Matthew. It was short, only a few words. "Mom, I'm sorry. Can I live with you and Lucy starting tomorrow?" The shocking scene at the birthday party was the final blow for James, or rather 2 blows. The other was the message from his son. Overnight, he became the laughingstock of his entire family and business circle, a poor man publicly humiliated by his wife and forced to sign divorce papers. His parents completely turned their backs on him. His father refused even to eat at the same table as him. "Until you cleanly sort out that paperwork, don't call me father." At home, the treatment was glacial. Outside, the incessant pressure from Vanessa. "Darling, now that you're divorced, when are you going to introduce me to your parents? When are we going to see our new house? I saw a mansion with a pool. I think it's what we deserve. And the 5-carat diamond ring you promised me, when is that happening?" James, hearing Vanessa's excited voice on the other end of the phone, felt nauseous. He was socially ruined, with 1,000 problems, and all she cared about was those things. "Shut up!" he finally yelled into the phone. There was a silence, followed by Vanessa's offended crying. "Are you yelling at me, James? Don't forget that if it weren't for me, you never would have decided to divorce. Now I'm your one true love. How can you treat me like this?" James hung up and smashed the phone against the wall. The screen shattered. True love. Now he saw clearly. It wasn't love, it was a condemnation. Under all that pressure, James collapsed. He looked like a man drained of energy. In just a few days, his eyes had sunken and his beard had grown, making him look 10 years older. Finally, he faced reality. He couldn't beat Sophia. He had utterly lost. With a new phone, he dialed that familiar number, trembling. After several rings, she answered. Sophia's voice was as calm as ever. "Hello, Sophia." "It's me," James said, his throat dry. He couldn't say anything else. There was a long silence on the other end. Sophia didn't rush him or hang up. She simply waited. That silence was more humiliating to James than any mockery or reproach. He took a deep breath, and with all his strength, he managed to say, "I agree to all your conditions, all of them." "Good." Sophia's voice showed no emotion. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the courthouse." Having said that, she hung up without another word. James slumped onto the sofa. The phone slipped from his hand. It was over. The final agreement was reached quickly. Lucy's custody went to Sophia, and Matthew's to James, although Matthew would spend every weekend with his mother. Regarding assets, Sophia received half of the marital estate, including the city condo in Midtown East that James thought he had hidden, and additional compensation for the undocumented funds he had amassed. James, now numb, signed without negotiating. The next day, they left the courthouse together, each holding a document certifying their divorce. James looked haggard and hunched over, as if ill. Sophia was the opposite. She walked upright, and though without makeup, her face radiated a new light. She breathed deeply the free air. She felt liberated. Just then, Vanessa arrived, running. She was dressed flashily and clung to James. "Darling, it's done." "That's great," she said, shaking his arm, oblivious to his expression. "We can finally be together. Come on, let's go look at houses right now and choose the ring. Our wedding has to be spectacular so everyone sees you chose correctly by staying with me." James's face was a mixture of exhaustion and irritation. "Can you just shut up for a moment, please?" Sophia, observing the ironic scene, smiled faintly and turned away. Looking up, she saw a familiar black sedan parked across the street. The window slowly rolled down, revealing Alexander Vance's kind face. He seemed to have been waiting for a while. "Congratulations," Alexander said with a sincere smile. "Where are you headed? I'll drive you to start your new life." Sophia hesitated for a moment and then smiled. She opened the door and got in. The car started smoothly, leaving behind the couple who were still arguing. "Take this," Alexander said, handing her a folder from the passenger seat. Sophia took it, surprised. These are proofs of other assets Mr. Thorne tried to divert through offshore accounts a few days ago. I thought you might need them, though I see they are no longer necessary. Sophia was stunned, looking at Alexander. How did he know all that? Even more than she had investigated. Seeing her surprise, Alexander smiled and finally told her everything. Yes, I am the CEO of the Atlas Group. For business competition reasons, we have been thoroughly investigating James Thorne's company for some time. In the process, we learned about some of his family matters. He looked her in the eyes with evident admiration. Your coolness and determination deeply impressed me. The car stopped at a traffic light. Alexander turned to her and with a touch of anticipation said, "To celebrate, I'd like to invite you and little Lucy to lunch. Oh, and my company is developing a new children's theme park project that might interest you." A few months later, Sophia and Lucy moved into a new house with a small garden. Life had finally returned to calm. With the assets she obtained, she made stable investments that provided her with a comfortable income each month. "Mom, look, I drew another butterfly." Lucy, 10, ran to Sophia, who was pruning flowers in the garden. Under the sun, her daughter's smile was radiant. Sophia put down the shears and stroked her hair. This was the life she wanted. Alexander had naturally integrated into their lives, like a friend. He never forced things, but he was always there. On weekends, he appeared with books and helped Lucy with her science experiments. If the weather was nice, he took them to a farm to pick strawberries. If Sophia forgot to eat because she was immersed in investment reports, he magically appeared with a delicious dinner. His presence was a pleasant warmth, neither suffocating nor distant. Lucy adored her Uncle Alex, so wise and affectionate. One night, before sleeping, Lucy whispered in her ear, "Mom, can Uncle Alex be my new dad? He's much better than Dad. He helps me with homework, listens to my school stories, and never gets tired." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She hugged her daughter, feeling a slight blush. "Why do you say that, sweetie?" "Because when Uncle Alex looks at you, he has stars in his eyes, like when you look at me." Her daughter's innocent words created a ripple in Sophia's heart. She realized that her heart, frozen by a failed marriage, was slowly melting with Alexander's quiet warmth. And she also realized that she looked forward to every one of his visits. In contrast to Sophia's tranquil life, James's was chaos. Ellie, during one of their afternoon teas, updated her on the latest gossip. "You wouldn't believe it. That Vanessa is fleecing him. One day a handbag, the next day a watch." James's company was already doing poorly because of the Atlas Group competition, and on top of that, he lost more than half his assets with you. He no longer has money to satisfy her, so they spend all day arguing. And Matthew is becoming more and more rebellious. He got the worst grades in class, and when James said something, Matthew replied, "Worry about your own business. You're in no position to give lectures to anyone." James almost fainted. Now he's realizing how hard it is to raise a child. He thought giving money was enough. Sophia listened in silence. Those people and those problems seemed like they belonged to another life. Another weekend, Alexander took them to the countryside. While Lucy ran after a kite, Sophia watched her from a blanket, smiling. Alexander, sitting beside her, didn't take his eyes off her. "Sophia," he suddenly said. Alexander looked into her eyes very seriously. After a moment, he gathered his courage and said, word for word, "I don't want to be just your support anymore. I want to be your right hand and your left hand, your life partner. Would you let me be?" His voice was calm and sincere. Sophia's heart stopped for an instant. She didn't answer, but the blush on her cheeks and the unmistakable happiness in her eyes said everything. In that perfect moment, the sound of a mobile broke the magic. It was James. Sophia hesitated but answered. James's voice on the other end was a desperate, tearful cry. "Sophia, please help me. Matthew has disappeared." Sophia jumped up. "What happened? Explain." "We argued about his grades. I yelled at him, and he ran out of the house, screaming that he couldn't take it anymore. He didn't take his phone. I've been looking for him all afternoon, and he's nowhere to be found. He must have gone to your house. He only listens to you now. You must have hidden him." His tone was a mix of helpless rage and projected blame. Sophia felt it wasn't even worth arguing. "Don't move from home," she said, and hung up. Alexander, seeing her anguish, stood up and approached her. Without asking unnecessary questions, he took her hand, which was cold with tension. "Everything will be fine," he told her firmly, looking into her eyes. "I'll go with you. We have to properly close the past to truly start the future." Sophia looked at him, and the anxiety in her heart miraculously calmed. She nodded strongly. Without another word, Alexander took her hand, and, with the other, lifted Lucy, who still didn't understand anything, into his arms. "Lucy, let's go find your brother. He misses us." The three quickly packed up and got into the car. The vehicle sped through the night, but Sophia's mind raced even faster. They reached James's house in the development in no time. In the distance, under a street lamp, they saw a small figure huddled by a hedge, his head buried between his knees. "It's Matthew." Before the car came to a complete stop, Sophia unbuckled her seatbelt and ran out. "Matthew." Hearing her voice, the small figure started and lifted his head. His face was covered in tears and his eyes were swollen. Seeing his mother, he burst into tears. "Mom." He leaped from the hedge and stumbled into her arms. "Mom, I don't want to go back to that house ever again," he sobbed, trembling. "That woman is always arguing with Dad. They throw things, they yell. Dad only cares about giving me money, but he doesn't pay attention to me, and she says I'm a hindrance. And because I got bad grades, Dad told me I was useless, a failure like you." Every word was a dagger in Sophia's heart. She hugged him tightly, stroking his back. "It's okay, Matthew, it's over. Mom is here. No one will ever treat you like that again." Alexander approached, took off his jacket, and placed it over Matthew's shoulders. "It's cold out here. Let's go inside and talk." While Matthew gradually calmed down, Alexander sat beside him with a model airplane they had left unfinished last time. He didn't mention James or Vanessa. He simply said, "Like a friend, Matthew, in life, sometimes a man has to face situations he doesn't like. Running away doesn't solve anything. Today you were able to escape that house. But what about tomorrow, and in the future? Your father made a mistake and is now paying the consequences. But you are different. You have the power to choose. Your mother, with her intelligence and courage, secured that right for you, the right to choose what kind of person you want to be. Do you want to be like him, someone who blames others and avoids responsibility? Or do you want to be like your mother, someone who faces things bravely?" These words were more effective than any lecture. Matthew looked up, looked at Alexander, and then at his mother. For the first time, he seemed to understand the weight of the word choice. "I want to be with Mom and Lucy," he said in a quiet but firm voice. The matter was resolved through lawyers. James, overwhelmed by his own problems, had no energy to argue. He accepted the custody change immediately. From then on, Sophia and Alexander took charge of Matthew's life and studies. A year later, on an early summer afternoon, while Sophia read a story to Lucy in the garden, Alexander approached her with a bouquet of freshly cut roses. Matthew, piloting a drone, made it fly overhead. A small velvet box hung from the drone. Alexander knelt down. Sophia opened the box, revealing a simple but brilliant ring. "I no longer want to be your friend. I want to be your husband. Matthew and Lucy's father, your partner for life. Will you marry me?" Sophia covered her mouth, her eyes full of happy tears. Matthew and Lucy shouted beside her, "Say yes! Say yes!" Sophia, laughing and crying, nodded with all her strength. "Yes, yes, I will." Their wedding was an intimate and warm ceremony. Sophia, in a white dress, smiled with happiness that sprang from her soul. Matthew and Lucy, dressed in formal wear, scattered flower petals as they walked, their smiles brighter than the Sunday. Decades passed. On the garden swing, a silver-haired couple sat together. Sophia leaned on Alexander's shoulder, looking into the distance where their grandchildren ran and laughed on the lawn. Lucy had become a prestigious architect, an intelligent and independent woman like her mother. Matthew, under Alexander's guidance, had become a responsible and successful man with his own company, and most importantly, a happy family he adored. He often visited his mother and Alexander, and they held long conversations about life and business. He had long understood that the decision his mother made back then had been the best for everyone. The sunset painted the garden a warm golden color. Alexander took Sophia's hand, marked by the passage of time, and whispered in her ear, "I'm so lucky to have had you in my life." Sophia turned to her husband. They looked at each other and smiled.